Hey guys, so one of my favorite aspects of the Western spaghetti movie is that it finally expanded upon a forgotten piece of SMG4 lore from 2021, that being Meggy's inspirational figure, One-Shot Wren. I loved this, as it seemed like One-Shot Wren was a character who would never be brought up again, so seeing him get to play a big role and having his influence on Meggy properly shown to us is great for fleshing out the SMG4 lore. This all got me thinking about other forgotten plot points in SMG4 over recent years which haven't been resolved or expanded upon enough, and whether or not SMG4 may conclude any of these over the next few months similar to the fantastic conclusion they gave to One-Shot Wren. I will not be talking about really recent and resolved stuff like the TV entity, Marty and Melony or the new castle in this video, though, as these plot points are clearly all still ongoing and most certainly going to be resolved later this year, and so they are not forgotten plot points. If you somehow stumbled upon this video before my theory videos, go watch those for my thoughts and theories about the recent lore stuff happening on SMG4. Okay, so being honest, this video will be sort of a rehash of an older video I made in 2022, as rather disappointingly, some of the stuff I brought up in that video have still not been resolved. However, my first point in that video, being Meggy's delayed graduation, has thankfully been resolved since then. We even see her doing proper sports coaching at the end of Western Spaghetti. My hope now is that Meggy being an official sports coach is not forgotten like how her attending college was, and hopefully the suggestion I originally made in that old video is somewhat similar to what happens next with Meggy's character, with that suggestion being to have a mini arc centered on her like the Seiko and Keizo mini arc in which Meggy coaches a sports team, possibly for Splatoon Turf Wars, which would make sense, as she is a Splatfest champion. If not some sort of story arc, then hopefully we see her doing this job every so often, sort of like how Bob's Hotel or Luigi's Flower Shop has been brought up occasionally. Actually, speaking of those businesses, while not really unresolved plot points, both of these have not really been brought up a lot recently, especially Luigi's Flower Shop. The last mention of that being in Mario is fine, which is especially weird considering that was established only this year. Moving on, this unresolved plot point is probably the one that confuses me the most as to why it has been forgotten, with that being the status of Whisk from Sunset Paradise being left unresolved, which to be clear does count as an unresolved SMG4 plot point, as they both occur in the same canon. In the final scene of Sunset Paradise, we see Whisk retrieve her mask before leaving somewhere, which I take to mean that she may have left Port Aurora. And since then we have never seen her again or even had her mentioned in any way. I think initially in 2022 this was because they were holding off bringing her to the SMG4 series, as they may have been looking to bring her back for a season 2 of Sunset Paradise, which they had left room for with Meggy telling Ori that she will come back to the island eventually. However, I don't think a season 2 of Sunset Paradise will ever be created at this point, as not only has it been way too long now since a season 2 should have been created, considering the length in between Media Runner seasons, but also I highly doubt Glitch currently have the workforce to work on Sunset Paradise, considering they're working on 2 other shows currently. I also think that Sunset Paradise was just not popular enough view-wise to justify working on it over these other 2 far more successful shows view-wise. I also believe that Aziz being brought over to the SMG4 series last year was the nail in the coffin for Sunset Paradise Season 2. Therefore, I do not really understand why she has not been brought over to the SMG4 series yet, now that we are in 2023 and with Sunset Paradise being 2 years old, especially due to the cliffhanger at the end of Sunset Paradise, the addition of Aziz and the fact that getting new models and voice actors clearly is not a challenge for the SMG4 team. This is still such a shame in my opinion, as I think she'd be a great and popular addition to the series, and I'm really curious what her SMG4 style design would look like, as in like Aziz. I think they will update her design, so that it fits alongside Meggy's SMG4 design. Alright, so this next one is probably the most annoying forgotten plot point in SMG4, with that being Melony learning to become a manga artist following Axel's death in Motfi 2021 in order to finish the two-piece manga/anime he was making. To be honest, they seemed a bit confused about whether this was a manga or anime, but it seems they settled on it being a manga by Motfi 2021. But anyway, since I last mentioned this plot point in my old video, Melony practicing her drawing skills has not been mentioned or shown at all, with the last time this was shown being in the Mario documentary video, by the way. It's clear this plot point was dropped in favor of the fierce deity power training instead, but I have no idea why they just completely abandoned this. It would have made a lot of sense to wrap this plot point up sometime in 2022, after Revelations, considering that the whole becoming a god character arc was wrapped up and Axel had just asked Melony to bring him another drawing, which would have been a great way to explain her being remotivated to continue trying to finish Two Piece. With Melony being very underused this year in general, I think a perfect way to make up for this is to have a mini arc later this year, where she finishes Two Piece and/or attempts to reclaim Axel's lost title as the greatest manga/anime artist, which he lost during the Genesis arc. I hope that, if they really are trying to resolve things that were left unfinished, as hopefully suggested by the stuff they've done with Meggy, that this plot point is the next one they cover, as it is definitely the most pressing loose end in my opinion, considering it was established at the end of an arc. That would be somewhat like if they had never made Meggy's destiny and just never had the final Splatfest take place, despite this being very clearly set up at the end of the anime arc. Before moving on, I'll briefly mention that, since my last two videos on the topic, we have seen Melony's new home again since the Revelations arc, with that being in the It's Gotta Be Perfect movie, which was about a year since we last saw it. Hopefully we will actually see it again sometime, since I like it when they establish where every character lives. It's just a neat bit of world building. Lastly, this unresolved plot point from 2022 probably pisses me off the most, even more so than these other forgotten plot points and even the rather poorly handled arcs in 2022. That is the fact that they introduced Wheeler last year, who was revealed to be Shrumi's grandpa, but since then we have never gotten another Shroomy lore episode that actually explores their dynamic and relationship, despite the fact that there seemed to be a trend of a new Shroomy lore episode every year before 2022. This is made even more annoying by Shroomy being underused throughout 2022 and still being pretty underused in 2023, though we may be starting to see a reverse to this, but time will tell if that's the case. And on top of that, Wheeler has not appeared at all in 2023, despite us being halfway through the year, and that's just unbelievably insane, as he got a decent amount of appearances in 2022, usually playing a notable role in the episodes he was in. Heck, we've even seen Ramensei before Wheeler this year, and Ramensei is almost certainly the most underused SMG4 original character, but yet he at least appeared in the background of the safe and legal SMG4 show episode. As a diehard Shroomy fan, this is just really starting to piss me off lol, especially as I thought Wheeler was a really fun character as well, and I feel like the SMG4 series could use some new minor antagonists, especially considering SMG3 no longer serves that role. So what do you guys think about all this unresolved stuff, and do you think any of it will ever be resolved? Feel free to mention anything else I may not have covered in this video as well. Toodles guys.